pregnant wife catches billionaire husband cheating, divorces by phone, and becomes a boss abroad. You won't believe how quickly a fairy tale can turn into a nightmare. Valentina Garcia thought she had it all: a loving husband, a lavish lifestyle, and a precious baby on the way. The whispers of betrayal seemed unimaginable until she witnessed them for herself. In one earth-shattering moment, Valentina's world crumbled beneath her feet. With her heart in pieces but her spirit unbroken, she walked away from the empire she helped build, determined to forge a destiny all her own. This is the gripping tale of heartbreak and rebirth, of a pregnant wife who dares to become her own legend when betrayed. Valentina Garcia grew up in a modest home on the outskirts of San Diego, California. Her parents, Marco and Lucinda Garcia, were hardworking immigrants from Mexico, determined to give their children a life filled with opportunity. Valentina embraced their dream with every fiber of her being. From an early age, she excelled in academics, art, and sports. She was the sort of girl who could dazzle with a paintbrush in one hand and a tennis racket in the other, her ponytail swishing as she balanced her many passions. By the time she entered college at Stanford University, she already had a clear vision of her future. She wanted to explore international relations, perhaps even work for the United Nations. But life had other, more glamorous and treacherous plans for her. It was at Stanford where she first met Alexander Harrington, a tall, striking figure with a confident stride. Alexander was known around campus for his keen business mind and his family's wealth. Rumor had it his grandfather co-founded Harrington Industries, a conglomerate spanning everything from real estate to biotech. Alexander's presence in any room was impossible to ignore. People marveled at his brilliance, but more than anything, they were captivated by his charm. Valentina and Alexander's paths crossed at a charity event organized by a friend of hers, Monica Lee, who was raising funds for children's education in underprivileged countries. Valentina was helping out by greeting guests at the registration booth, and when she looked up into Alexander's piercing blue eyes, she couldn't help but feel a spark. He introduced himself politely, but there was an immediate undercurrent of something deeper, an intensity that Valentina had never felt before. Their first conversation was casual. She marveled at the design of the event's invitation cards. He commented on how passionately she spoke about the cause. Yet, beneath the pleasantries, it was clear they had both discovered something special. By the end of the evening, they had exchanged numbers, shared inside jokes, and mapped out a date for the following week. Their relationship blossomed faster than anyone expected. Within months, they were inseparable, finishing each other's sentences and laughing over private jokes. Valentina was drawn not just to Alexander's money, although it was hard to ignore the luxurious dinners and high-end gifts, but to his intellect and his vision. She could see him one day taking over his family's empire and steering it toward more humanitarian ventures. He, on the other hand, adored her radiant positivity and her knack for connecting with people from all walks of life. After graduation, Alexander launched an ambitious tech startup that used artificial intelligence to streamline global supply chains. Though it began as a modest venture run from a shared office space in Palo Alto, it soon secured significant investments from venture capital firms, including one associated with Mark Cuban. Valentina, meanwhile, took a position at an international non-profit, continuing her passion for making a difference. Yet, despite her love for humanitarian work, Valentina found herself increasingly drawn into Alexander's world of high-stakes business. She often joined him at conferences where celebrities like Jessica Alba or philanthropists like Bill Gates would speak. Their glamorous nights involved red carpets, champagne toasts, and closed-door networking sessions. Soon enough, she started handling the social impact wing of Alexander's blossoming empire, merging her philanthropic ideals with his financial clout. They made a formidable team, one part business-savvy billionaire and one part heart-driven humanitarian. Their wedding was the talk of the year. Held at the Harrington family estate in Napa Valley, the guest list read like an international who's who. Politicians, Hollywood actors, tech moguls, everyone wanted to witness the union of these two bright stars. Valentina's father, Marco, walked her down the aisle with tears of pride in his eyes, while Lucinda cheered her on. Alexander's parents, Richard and Catherine, watched fondly, confident that their only son had found the perfect bride to stand by his side. In the golden glow of that Californian summer evening, beneath a canopy of roses, Valentina vowed to love and cherish Alexander forever. Little did she know that the forever she imagined was far more fragile than she believed. For beneath the surface of every seemingly perfect life, shadows can lurk, waiting for the right moment to disrupt even the grandest plans. As Alexander's empire expanded, so did the demands on his time and energy. Valentina tried to keep pace with the changes, all the while fighting to preserve the genuine, close-knit relationship that defined their earlier years. But the cracks were forming, however invisible they might have been to the untrained eye. Whispers of Alexander's overwork and rumors of extramarital distractions began circulating in the circles they frequented. Valentina brushed them aside, confident in their love and certain that no one knew her husband better than she did. For a moment, the scandal seemed inconceivable. Yet, as time would prove, truth can be far stranger and more devastating than fiction. Alexander Harrington's ascent from a promising Stanford graduate to a billionaire CEO was nothing short of meteoric. His tech startup, Harrington Logistics Solutions, cornered a market few had even realized existed. Large retailers like Walmart, major e-commerce platforms like Amazon, and international shipping conglomerates like Maersk clamored for his expertise. With savvy investments, a series of well-timed acquisitions, and a pinch of luck, Alexander grew wealthier by the day. Soon, he began making headlines in Forbes and Fortune, hailed as the next big name in Silicon Valley. Valentina, for her part, was caught in a whirlwind of luxury that she never quite anticipated. She moved from her comfortable, modest apartment to Alexander's sprawling penthouse in San Francisco. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the Golden Gate Bridge, the bay shimmering in the distance like a promise of endless possibility. Her favorite part of this new home was the library, a quiet sanctuary filled with rare books on art, history, and global affairs. In between her philanthropic projects, she would disappear for hours, losing herself in stories that transported her far away from the frenetic pace of the city. As the money piled up, Alexander's extravagances grew. He purchased a private jet and named it Valentina's Wings, insisting it was a tribute to his beloved wife. Designer gowns began to fill her walk-in closets, and invitations to exclusive charity, galas, became weekly events. When the Harringtons ventured out for dinner, they did so at Michelin-starred restaurants like the French Laundry in Yountville, always with a driver and a small entourage of discreet security. Despite the dizzying affluence, Valentina remained down to earth. She insisted on personally greeting every staff member in their household, from the housekeepers to the sous chef who prepared Alexander's gourmet meals. She knew all their names and the names of their children. Her warmth and sincerity earned her the love and loyalty of everyone around her. Even Catherine Harrington, Alexander's often reserved mother, was won over by Valentina's genuine heart. For a time, it seemed like a golden era in their marriage. They traveled to Tokyo for business conferences, stopping by Kyoto's ancient temples to offer silent prayers for continued blessings. In Paris, where Alexander hoped to expand his logistics empire into the European market, they found a cozy apartment overlooking the Seine and made it their second home. They entertained diplomats, CEOs, and celebrities alike, forging partnerships that made Harrington Logistics Solutions a household name among global enterprises. Somewhere, amid these dizzying successes, Valentina discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with indescribable joy. She pictured a small child running through the halls of their California estate, laughing freely in the sunshine, the spitting image of Alexander's best qualities and her own nurturing spirit. Alexander was thrilled at first, immediately promising the best medical care money could buy. He booked prenatal appointments with the renowned Dr. Thomas Brigham at the prestigious UCSF Medical Center. He even commissioned a lavish nursery designed by an award-winning interior decorator. Yet, as the pregnancy progressed, Valentina sensed a certain distance in Alexander. He stopped attending some of her doctor's appointments, delegating them to his personal assistant, Gregory. Business trips to Dubai, London, and Berlin became more frequent and more secretive. When she asked about specifics, Alexander brushed her off, claiming it was all last-minute business. Then came the late-night phone calls, the hushed tones, the hurried endings whenever she entered the room. Valentina tried to rationalize it. Perhaps the stress of expanding his empire was getting to him. Perhaps he was just worried about balancing fatherhood and business. One afternoon, while Valentina was resting in their Paris apartment, she received a call from her old friend from Stanford, Monica Lee. Monica worked in venture capital and often circulated in the same circles as the Harringtons. In a hesitant tone, Monica mentioned hearing rumors about Alexander's closeness to a young socialite named Claudette Legrand, an heiress who dabbled in fashion design. Valentina felt her heart constrict, but she laughed it off, reminding Monica that rumors were the lifeblood of gossip columns, especially when it came to high-profile marriages. However, she could not entirely rid herself of the growing unease. The seed had been planted, and doubt began to weave itself into her thoughts. She recalled the fleeting moments, a faint lipstick mark on Alexander's collar, which he'd claimed was left over from their earlier kiss, a kiss she did not remember sharing, or the times he claimed to be exhausted from meetings, yet came home oddly energized, wearing a cologne that wasn't the usual brand she had gifted him. Slowly, these small inconsistencies stacked up, like puzzle pieces forming an unwanted image. Still, Valentina was determined not to give in to suspicion without solid proof. She had seen too many marriages crumble under baseless paranoia. Besides, Alexander was her husband, her partner, the man who once pledged eternal devotion beneath an archway of roses. She reminded herself of the philanthropic ventures they led together, the genuine moments of laughter and closeness they had shared. Could it all have been a facade? No, she thought. There had to be a logical explanation. But, as Valentina would soon discover, logic had little to do with the storm that was about to unravel her life. She was on the cusp of realizing that money and fame could shield you from many things, but not betrayal, not when it came from the very person who claimed to love you most. The moment of truth arrived in a way Valentina never could have predicted. She was a few months pregnant, her belly gently curved under the soft fabrics of a designer maternity dress. She had flown back to San Francisco unexpectedly after a brief visit to her parents in San Diego, feeling a pressing need to reconnect with her roots. Alexander believed she would be away for another 2 days, which gave her an idea. She wanted to surprise him with a romantic dinner at home, just the two of them, celebrating the little life growing inside her. After instructing the household staff to prepare Alexander's favorite meal, roasted rack of lamb with rosemary and garlic, Valentina grabbed a bouquet of red roses from the local florist. She even picked up a specialty tiramisu from a patisserie that she knew he loved. With an excited flutter in her heart, she made her way to their penthouse, imagining his look of surprise upon seeing her. What she found instead was a scene that would be burned into her memory forever. The penthouse was strangely quiet when Valentina entered. She expected to see their butler, Gerard, bustling about or at least hear some soft music. Instead, the hush felt almost eerie. She set down the bouquet on the marble entryway table and tiptoed toward the master bedroom, guided by faint voices. The door was slightly ajar, allowing her a glimpse of something that made her blood turn to ice. Alexander was not alone. Standing next to him was a tall, slender woman with dark hair, wearing only a silk robe. They were laughing, an intimate sound that sent a shiver of revulsion through Valentina. Then, without warning, the woman leaned in and planted a slow, deliberate kiss on Alexander's lips. He responded with unsettling ease, his arms wrapping around her waist as though he had done it 1,000 times. The shock hit Valentina like a physical blow. She nearly dropped the pastry box, the thud echoing on the wooden floor. The woman who Valentina immediately recognized as Claudette Legrand from the photo she'd once seen turned in surprise. Alexander stepped back, his expression morphing from confusion to horror in the blink of an eye. For a few endless seconds, no one moved. Valentina felt her heart pounding so loudly she wondered if they could hear it. The words stuck in her throat, unable to escape. All the rumors, the lipstick marks, the late nights, they weren't just illusions. They were cold, hard reality, playing out right before her eyes. Valentina, Alexander finally managed to utter, his voice cracking. "It's not what it looks like. But how could it be anything else?" Tears pricked at Valentina's eyes. She gently placed the pastry box on the floor, her trembling hands desperate to maintain some semblance of control. She had walked in on the sort of betrayal that no excuses could rectify. Claudette, for her part, seemed unbothered by the gravity of the situation. She eyed Valentina's pregnant belly with a faint, mocking smirk before turning to gather her belongings. "I'll leave you two to talk," she said, her French accent dripping with condescension. She slipped into the adjacent bathroom, disappearing behind a closed door. The shock gave way to fury inside Valentina. She wanted to scream, to launch herself at the pair of them, to demand an explanation. But instead, she found herself choking back sobs, shaking her head in disbelief. "Why, Alexander, why would you do this?" He stepped toward her, reaching out as if to hold her. "Please, Valentina, listen." I. She drew back, refusing his touch. For one agonizing second, the image of the life they had built together flashed in her mind, their philanthropic initiatives, their wedding, the unborn child she carried. And here was the father of that child, cheating so brazenly, so carelessly in the very home they shared. "I can't do this," Valentina whispered, tears streaming down her face. In that moment, she knew whatever trust or love she once had in Alexander was shattered. She turned on her heel and fled the penthouse, ignoring his pleas. She made it to the elevator, pressing the button frantically until the doors slid shut. As she descended, her tears came in torrents, each sob threatening to fracture her entirely. She wrapped her arms around her belly as though shielding her child from the heartbreak that was crashing down around them. In the lobby, the shocked staff looked at her tear-stained face in confusion, but she brushed past them, stumbling out onto the street. A cold gust of San Francisco wind hit her, jolting her back into the moment. She hailed a cab with shaking hands, not even certain of her destination. All she knew was that she had to get away from that place, away from the lies, the betrayal, and the man she thought she knew. Somewhere in the back of her mind, Valentina felt a new determination brewing. She would not crumble. She would not be defined by Alexander's treachery. But first, she needed time to sort out her next steps. She needed to protect herself and her unborn child. For the first time since marrying him, she realized that Alexander's power and wealth could be used against her. That thought alone terrified her almost as much as the betrayal she had just witnessed. Valentina spent that night at a luxury hotel in the heart of the city, though she barely registered her surroundings. The plush bed, the skyline view, the spa facilities, it all meant nothing in the face of her emotional devastation. She replayed the moment in the penthouse over and over, hoping it would change somehow. But it never did. Alexander's betrayal was a fixed, brutal truth. Her phone buzzed incessantly with calls and messages from Alexander, but she refused to answer. All she could do was curl up on the bed, her arms protectively folded over her belly. She kept reminding herself to stay calm for the baby's sake. Through the haze of grief, she managed to call her best friend, Monica Lee, who rushed over without hesitation. Monica found Valentina in tears, eyes swollen, hair disheveled, but there was a calm resolution beneath her despair. Over cups of herbal tea, Valentina recounted every detail. Monica listened without judgment, her own eyes blazing with anger at the thought of Alexander's infidelity. "He doesn't deserve you," she said, pulling Valentina into a hug. "You know that, right?" Valentina nodded shakily, uncertain if she really believed it yet. She felt so many emotions: anger, sadness, betrayal, and strangely, guilt. Despite Alexander's wrongdoing, she wondered if she had somehow failed as a wife. It was a fleeting thought, quickly drowned out by her own sense of dignity. No, she told herself, this was on him and him alone. By morning, Alexander's calls turned desperate. He left voicemail after voicemail, alternating between tearful apologies and frantic demands to meet. Valentina ignored him, steeling her heart against his pleas. She realized she needed a plan. If she was going to leave him, she had to do it cleanly, safely, and in a way that protected her future and that of her unborn child. Her phone vibrated again, and this time she recognized the number. It was Catherine Harrington, Alexander's mother. With trembling fingers, Valentina answered. Catherine's concerned voice flooded her ear. "Valentina, my dear, please talk to me. Is it true what Alexander told me? He said you caught him and Claudette in the apartment." Valentina clenched her jaw, her emotions surging once again. "Yes," she managed to say, voice quivering. "I don't know what else to do. I'm done, Catherine. I can't live like this." There was a long pause on the other end. "I understand," Catherine finally replied, her tone heavy with sadness. "I'm so sorry. I never imagined he would betray you like this. I'm trying to get to the bottom of it. Please, if you need anything, call me. No matter what happens between you and Alexander, you'll always be family to me." That promise did little to ease Valentina's heartbreak, but it reminded her she wasn't entirely alone. She thanked Catherine, then hung up, sinking back against the plush hotel armchair. The future looked like a foggy landscape, but in her heart she felt a growing resolve. 2 days passed with no direct contact, until Alexander found out which hotel she was staying at. He showed up in the lobby, demanding to speak with her. Security alerted Valentina's suite. Through the phone at the front desk, she could hear Alexander pleading, "Please, Valentina, just let me talk to you. We can fix this." She stayed silent until she heard him say, "I love you. Think about our baby." Something inside her snapped. She grabbed her phone and dialed Alexander's number, refusing to let him see her face to face. When he picked up, she said, "I'm only going to say this once. We are done. I want a divorce." His panicked response tumbled out in gasps. "Valentina, please no. We can go to therapy." "We can," she cut him off. "How long has this been going on?" A long silence. He hesitated, and she already knew. "A few months. he admitted quietly. Valentina swallowed hard, blinking back tears. You knew I was pregnant, and you still went behind my back. You lied to me, Alexander, every single day. She could almost feel him cringing on the other end. I made a mistake. No, she interrupted, her voice growing steadier. A mistake is forgetting our anniversary. This was a choice. Repeated, conscious choices to be unfaithful. I'm not going to subject myself or our child to this kind of pain. Despite his frantic protests, Valentina made her stance clear. I'll have my lawyer contact you with the details. Do not call me unless it's about the child. I can't stomach hearing your excuses. She hung up, her entire body trembling. In one phone call, she had effectively ended her marriage. The surreal feeling crushed her, yet a part of her felt oddly liberated. She had taken the first step toward reclaiming her life. The next steps would be hard. There would be legal battles, public scrutiny, and heartbreak to wade through. But she refused to be defined by her husband's betrayal. After the call, she collapsed onto the bed, sobbing into the silk sheets. Monica held her hand until she calmed down, repeating quiet words of encouragement. And amidst the tears, Valentina thought about the baby growing inside her. She promised her child that they would have a better life, free from deceit and heartbreak. She would build that life, no matter how long and winding the road might be. With the divorce proceedings initiated, Valentina quickly realized how complicated life could become when one was married to a billionaire. Paparazzi hounded her every move, eager to snap the first photo of the scorned wife. Speculative headlines began popping up in tabloids. Valentina Garcia flees cheating billionaire, and heir apparent's mistress revealed. Even respectable business publications followed the drama, noting how Alexander's personal scandal might affect the stock price of Harrington Logistics Solutions. Valentina longed for a break from the relentless gossip and the painful memories haunting every corner of San Francisco. The city that once felt like the pinnacle of her dreams now felt suffocating, laced with betrayal and heartbreak. She craved an escape, a chance to regroup, to breathe, and to protect her child from the storms swirling around them. That's when she made a bold decision: she would go abroad. One of her closest friends from her non-profit days, Adriana Moretti, had moved to Milan to work for a prestigious art gallery that collaborated with UNESCO. Adriana had been urging Valentina to visit for years, praising the city's vibrant culture, sumptuous cuisine, and dynamic philanthropic community. A new environment might be just what Valentina needed to regain her footing. Before she left, she met quietly with her lawyer, Brenda Martinez, to finalize the steps needed for the divorce. Brenda was a sharp, no-nonsense attorney with a fierce reputation. She assured Valentina that she would take care of everything stateside, including handling any potential intimidation from Alexander's high-priced legal team. After all, Alexander might have wanted to keep things civil, but money had a way of turning even the simplest negotiations into cutthroat battles. Valentina's parents, Marco and Lucinda, also offered their unwavering support. Though they were heartbroken to see their daughter in pain, they admired her courage. Lucinda packed Valentina's favorite homemade tamales for the flight, comfort food for whenever you feel alone, she said with tears in her eyes. Marco kissed his daughter's forehead, whispering in Spanish, "Cuidate, mija," be strong for your child. Armed with a few suitcases of essentials, a folder of legal documents, and her mother's tamales carefully stowed in her carry-on, Valentina boarded a flight to Milan. The moment the plane took off, she closed her eyes and felt a surge of mixed emotions: relief, fear, hope, and heartbreak, all tangled into one. Arriving in Milan was like stepping into another world. The city's grand architecture, punctuated by the majestic Duomo di Milano, awakened Valentina's long-dormant sense of wonder. Adriana welcomed her at Malpensa airport, enveloping her in a warm hug. "You're safe here," Adriana whispered, steering Valentina toward a sleek black car waiting to take them to an apartment in the historic Brera district. Over the following weeks, Valentina allowed herself to heal. She wandered the cobblestone streets, lost in the splendor of art galleries, high-end boutiques, and hidden trattorias. She marveled at Da Vinci's The Last Supper and indulged in gelato at quaint sidewalk cafes. Slowly, she rediscovered the joy of small pleasures, a sunrise over the Navigli canals, the aroma of fresh espresso, the lively chatter of Italian locals. Yet, she couldn't escape her own ambitions for long. While her pregnancy anchored her resolve, it also fanned a certain urgency within her. She needed to secure a future, not just for herself, but for her unborn child. Adriana introduced her to influential figures in Milan's philanthropic and business community. One of them, Giancarlo Benedetti, a venture capitalist with a keen eye for social enterprises, was particularly intrigued by Valentina's unique blend of philanthropic experience and business acumen. Over espressos at the Armani Cafe, Giancarlo peppered her with questions about her background and soon offered her a consulting role at a startup incubator he supported. The job was modest by billionaire standards, but it was perfect for Valentina. She could remain in Milan, build her professional credibility anew, and continue her humanitarian focus. More importantly, she could do it all on her own terms, unshackled from Alexander's looming shadow. Of course, the divorce was never far from her mind. Every so often, she'd receive updates from Brenda about negotiations, property divisions, and legal wrangling over spousal support. She also learned that Alexander was trying to push for shared custody of their unborn child. He claimed to want a relationship with his future son or daughter, but Valentina suspected it was a ploy to maintain control. Still, Milan offered enough distance for her to catch her breath and refocus. In many ways, her life there felt like a second chance. She decorated her new apartment with warm, earthy tones, placing fresh flowers by the windows every week. She joined a prenatal yoga class, formed friendships with other expectant women who marveled at her resilience without prying too deeply into the details of her past. Her belly grew rounder with each month, a physical testament to the new life she carried, and to the unwavering strength blossoming within her soul. And so began Valentina's journey abroad, a baptism by fire that lit a spark she hadn't known she possessed. Every step she took away from the wreckage of her marriage and toward her own dreams felt like a liberation. And even though the road ahead was still fraught with challenges, she embraced the uncertainty. She was, in every sense of the word, rebuilding herself, and she refused to let anyone, not even a billionaire ex-husband, stand in her way again. Life in Milan wasn't without its challenges, but it offered Valentina the chance to reinvent herself. She lived in a charming apartment adorned with floral balconies located near the bustling Piazza del Duomo. Each morning, she'd wake up to the soft chime of church bells and the distant hum of Vespas. A sense of calm settled over her life, a welcome break from the chaos she left behind. Her new consultancy role at the startup incubator was a whirlwind of excitement. She attended pitch sessions where young entrepreneurs unveiled their visions for eco-friendly fashion lines, AI-driven health apps, and ethical supply chain solutions. With her background in both philanthropy and business, she quickly became an invaluable asset. Giancarlo Benedetti recognized her potential and began introducing her to his network of investors and corporate leaders. Day by day, Valentina found her confidence growing. She was no longer just the pregnant ex-wife of a billionaire. She was a skilled professional, forging her own path. Balancing her work and pregnancy was a delicate dance. Morning sickness sometimes forced her to slip out of meetings early, and fatigue would set in by afternoon. But she pressed on, propped up by her unwavering determination and the child growing inside her. She attended prenatal appointments with a caring Italian obstetrician, Dr. Lucia Romano, who praised her courage. "Your baby feels everything you feel," Dr. Romano said during one visit, patting Valentina's shoulder. "Let this strength and optimism guide you both." The more Valentina immersed herself in Milan's startup ecosystem, the more a daring idea began taking shape. She wanted to launch a business of her own, one that merged technology, philanthropy, and her passion for global betterment. She thought back to her time collaborating with Alexander, recalling the logistical nightmares non-profits often faced when distributing medical supplies or educational materials to remote areas. Could she develop a platform that streamlined these processes, making it easier for organizations to deliver aid effectively? Fueled by this vision, she spent her evenings researching, sketching out plans, and tapping into her network. Adriana, ever the supportive friend, lent an eager ear and introduced her to potential partners. Giancarlo arranged a few informal brainstorming sessions, offering feedback and guidance. Bit by bit, Valentina's new venture took shape. She named it Global Bridge, a platform that connected non-profits with ethical shipping solutions, ensuring transparency and cost efficiency. One of the biggest turning points came when Valentina pitched Global Bridge at a small networking event in Milan. She stood in front of a dozen investors and NGO representatives, her pregnant belly apparent beneath a sleek black dress. Nerves fluttered in her stomach, but she steadied herself, drawing on every bit of experience she had. She outlined the platform's potential impact, bridging logistical gaps to get crucial supplies like vaccines, textbooks, and disaster relief goods to where they were needed most, faster and cheaper than ever before. The room buzzed with interest. A few attendees scribbled notes. A middle-aged investor from Paris, Marc Dupont, asked pointed questions about scalability and profitability. Valentina answered calmly, explaining how integrating advanced analytics and AI could reduce overhead. The NGO representatives seemed particularly excited about the possibility of real-time tracking and resource allocation. By the end of the session, Valentina had a stack of business cards and several requests for follow-up meetings. That night, she returned to her apartment exhilarated. She replayed the pitch in her mind, smiling every time she remembered the nods and compliments. For the first time in what felt like ages, she believed she could build something meaningful, something that was entirely hers, without Alexander's influence or money. Of course, the spectre of her ongoing divorce loomed. Every so often, she'd receive updates from Brenda, her attorney, informing her about Alexander's shifting strategies. He offered a hefty settlement in exchange for a quiet, uncontested divorce. But he also insisted on terms that included paternal rights and visitation schedules. Valentina found herself torn between her desire to put everything behind her and her fear that Alexander's involvement could cast a shadow over her newly forming life. During one of her sleepless nights, she received an unexpected call from Catherine Harrington. "I wanted to check on you, dear," Catherine said softly. "The media here has been relentless. I'm worried about you and the baby." Valentina sighed, feeling a mix of comfort and anxiety. She had come to appreciate Catherine's concern, but she also knew the Harrington family was never truly free of Alexander's fear. Still, the older woman sounded sincere. "I'm coping," Valentina replied. Milan has been good for me. I hope you can forgive him someday, Catherine ventured, her voice trembling with emotion. He's my son, and I love him, but I know he's hurt you deeply. Forgiveness seemed like a distant possibility, especially with the memory of Alexander's betrayal still so fresh. But Valentina answered politely, I'm not there yet, Catherine, but thank you for calling. After hanging up, she realized how much she had changed. The old Valentina might have responded with tears or confusion, but this newer version of herself was forging ahead, forging something remarkable. Even the baby, who kicked gently inside her belly, seemed to sense her new determination. She allowed herself a small, hopeful smile. With each passing day, her venture in Milan took clearer shape. She attracted a small team of like-minded individuals, tech experts, logistics specialists, and philanthropic advisors who believed in her vision. By the time her second trimester ended, she had secured a round of seed funding. It was a far cry from the billions Alexander wielded, but it was a start. More importantly, it was her own. In quiet moments, Valentina sometimes wondered if Alexander would try to sabotage her efforts or co-opt them for his own gain. But as she watched her fledgling company grow, she realized she was no longer shackled to such fears. She was, quite literally, creating her own future, one that no longer revolved around him. She might have been pregnant, betrayed, and far from home, but she had never felt more alive. The sun was setting over the canals in Milan when Valentina received a call that shattered her newfound peace. On the other end, Brenda's usually steady voice trembled with urgency. Alexander is contesting the divorce settlement, she said flatly. He's also filing a petition to require you to return to the United States for hearings related to child custody. Valentina's heart sank. She clutched the phone, pacing her living room as the golden light of dusk filtered through the balcony doors. What? After what he did, he wants to drag me back to court in San Francisco. Her voice trembled with a mixture of anger and disbelief. She had hoped Alexander would sign off on a mutually respectful agreement, particularly given the media scrutiny he faced from the scandal. But apparently he was changing tactics. Brenda explained that Alexander's legal team was challenging Valentina's move to Italy as an attempt to alienate him from his unborn child. They were painting her relocation as a vindictive maneuver. "We can fight this," Brenda reassured her. "We have strong arguments. You're establishing a legitimate life and work here, and you needed distance. But we need to prepare for a potential legal fight." A cold sense of dread swept through Valentina. She had come to Milan to heal and start afresh, not to wage a transatlantic legal war. The thought of returning to face Alexander in a courtroom, especially while pregnant, filled her with anxiety. Yet, as Brenda outlined their legal options, she felt a stubborn resolve taking shape. She would not let Alexander, or anyone else, dictate her future. Over the following weeks, the tension mounted. Alexander's lawyers sent one notice after another, demanding documentation of her living expenses, details about Global Bridge, and even medical records of her pregnancy. The invasive nature of these requests felt like a violation, a manipulative tactic to assert control. Valentina tried to keep calm, focusing on her blossoming company and her approaching due date. She had come too far to let fear consume her. Then, in a move that blindsided her, Alexander showed up in Milan unannounced. She first heard about his arrival from Adriana, who spotted him outside the Palazzo Reale during a fashion exhibit. Valentina's stomach churned. She dreaded the possibility of a confrontation, but knew it was only a matter of time before he sought her out. Sure enough, Alexander appeared at her apartment building 2 days later. She spotted him from her balcony, stepping out of a black car, flanked by 2 suited bodyguards. Her heart pounded. She rushed to meet him in the lobby, not wanting to cause a scene or have him barge into her private sanctuary. As she stepped off the elevator, she saw him pacing, looking both exhausted and determined. He wore a tailored navy suit, and for a fleeting moment, she was reminded of the man she fell in love with, the poised, charismatic entrepreneur. Then she remembered Claudette's mocking gaze and the betrayal that had torn them apart. "Valentina," he started, turning toward her. His eyes flickered to her pregnant belly, and a pained expression crossed his face. "You look," he hesitated, at a loss for words. "You look well," he finally managed. She folded her arms protectively. "What are you doing here, Alexander?" He stepped closer, his voice low. "Can we talk?" "Privately?" She nodded curtly, leading him to a quiet corner of the lobby, away from curious onlookers. "I don't appreciate you showing up unannounced," she said, her tone bristling with resentment. "You could have gone through my lawyer if you needed to see me." Alexander sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "Valentina, this is important. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes. But I don't want to lose you or our child." His voice cracked slightly. "Let me fix this." Her anger flared, hot and unyielding. She pressed a hand over her belly, a protective gesture. "You can't just fly to Milan and pretend to play the penitent husband, Alexander. You made your bed, literally. I'm done being your afterthought." His jaw tightened. "I was under immense pressure, okay? The company, the expansions. I lost sight of what mattered. Claudette was a distraction, a stupid one. But that doesn't mean I don't love you." Valentina let out a bitter laugh. "You have a twisted way of showing love." They stood there in tense silence, the grand marble floor underfoot, reflecting their confrontation like a distorted mirror. Finally, Alexander took a step back. "I'm willing to settle this divorce amicably," he said, his tone softening. "I want to provide for you and the baby, but I also want to be in my child's life. I need your guarantee that you won't shut me out." She studied him, searching his eyes for sincerity. Part of her wondered if this was yet another manipulation tactic. However, she also recognized that their child was half Alexander's. She couldn't deny him access forever, not unless he proved himself unfit. "I'm not trying to shut you out," she said quietly, swallowing her pride. "But you destroyed the trust between us, and now you're fighting me in court, trying to force me back to the States." Alexander nodded, a rueful flicker in his gaze. "My lawyers advised it was the strongest legal move. He paused, exhaling a weary breath. "Maybe we can find a compromise. I'll drop the custody petition if you let me be present for the birth. Let me be a father." His words hung in the air, stirring conflicting emotions within Valentina. After everything he had done, part of her wanted to slam the door on him forever. But she also felt a pang of empathy, a recognition that fatherhood could be transformative if he took it seriously. "I'll think about it," she said finally, her voice taut. "But don't show up here again without notice. And don't you dare try any more legal tricks to control me. I'm building a life for myself here, and I won't let you sabotage it." A flicker of remorse crossed his face. "I understand." He hesitated, then offered a strained smile. "You look radiant, by the way. Pregnancy suits you." She gave no response, turning away before her resolve could waver. Alexander left, flanked by his bodyguards, leaving Valentina standing in the silent lobby. She exhaled shakily, tears burning the back of her eyes. Despite her outward composure, the confrontation left her shaken. She realized that untangling herself from Alexander was going to be harder than she ever imagined. But she also realized something else. Her life no longer revolved around his whims. She had Global Bridge, new friends, and the promise of a future built on her own terms. Alexander's presence in Milan might threaten her peace, but it wouldn't stop her from moving forward. The storm may have followed her across an ocean, but Valentina refused to drown in it. She would stand tall as she had always done and protect the life she was determined to create. With Alexander's unexpected appearance in Milan, Valentina redoubled her focus on Global Bridge. She felt an urgent need to cement her venture's foundation, as though success might shield her from the turbulence Alexander stirred. Her daily routine became a disciplined balance of investor meetings, product development sessions, and prenatal appointments. She worked out of a sleek shared office space near Corso Como, where bright murals of world maps and motivational quotes lined the walls. Her team expanded from 3 part-timers to a core group of 8 talented individuals. They coded tirelessly, ironing out the software's algorithms that matched NGOs to vetted shipping partners. Valentina tested prototypes, sought feedback from prospective users, and watched with pride as Global Bridge evolved into a robust platform. The day they launched a private beta, she treated the entire team to celebratory pizza at a local pizzeria, the kind of low-key feast that felt refreshingly unpretentious compared to her old life. Yet, as exhilarating as building a startup could be, Valentina couldn't ignore her pregnancy. She was well into her 3rd trimester, her belly now quite pronounced. Fatigue hit harder, and her ankles swelled during long hours at the office. Dr. Lucia Romano advised her to scale back her workload, emphasizing the importance of rest and regular checkups. Despite her ambition, Valentina took the advice to heart. She implemented a flexible schedule, delegating responsibilities to her burgeoning leadership team. She began taking daily walks around Parco Sempione, relishing the fresh air and the gentle exercise that soothed her body. During one such walk, Giancarlo Benedetti joined her, strolling beside her along the winding paths beneath tall, leafy trees. Birds chirped overhead, and a soft breeze rustled the foliage, offering a serene backdrop to their conversation. "I'm proud of how far you've come," Giancarlo said, hands in his pockets. "Global Bridge has real potential. We have several major NGOs eager to join once we finish beta testing." Valentina smiled, a glow of accomplishment lighting her features. "It's been a whirlwind. I sometimes can't believe how different my life is now," he nodded thoughtfully. "It suits you. You're not just Alexander Harrington's wife anymore. You're Valentina Garcia, a force to be reckoned with in your own right." Her expression grew wistful. "A pregnant force to be reckoned with," she joked gently, resting a hand on her belly. Giancarlo laughed. "That only adds to your mystique." Their companionship had grown into a friendship that Valentina deeply valued. He never pried into her personal struggles with Alexander, though he was well aware of the tension. Their bond was built on mutual respect, shared aspirations, and the unspoken understanding that some wounds needed time and empathy to heal. A few days later, Valentina attended a prenatal checkup and received surprising news. Her baby was measuring large and healthy, and Dr. Romano mentioned the possibility of an early delivery. Instead of panic, Valentina felt a thrill of excitement tempered by anxiety. She was about to become a mother, and that reality overshadowed every business deal, every emotional scar. The next month passed in a blur of preparations. Adriana helped her decorate the nursery, a cheerful space painted in soothing pastels, adorned with whimsical murals of hot air balloons. Valentina ordered a sleek Italian crib and stocked up on baby essentials, determined to handle the transition into motherhood with grace and independence. Meanwhile, updates from Brenda in the US indicated that Alexander's legal team had softened their stance. Possibly spurred by their conversation in Milan, Alexander no longer demanded that Valentina return stateside immediately, though he still insisted on a formal custody agreement once the baby arrived. Part of her dreaded the inevitable legal negotiations, but another part felt relief that the situation hadn't escalated further. When the day finally came unexpectedly early, Valentina felt the first contractions at 2 a.m. She rushed to the hospital with Adriana and Giancarlo at her side. In the brightly lit delivery room, amid the chaos of monitors and hushed voices, she labored through intense pain. Hours passed in a dizzying swirl of encouragement from midwives and supportive squeezes on her hand. And then, at last, the wail of a newborn filled the air. She gazed down at her tiny daughter, swaddled in a soft blanket, black hair plastered to her delicate scalp, eyes squinting against the hospital lights. Tears blurred Valentina's vision. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every ounce of stress evaporated into a single, awe-struck moment of gratitude and love. She named her daughter Solana, a nod to the sunshine that had once lit her path in California and also to the radiant new beginning she felt in her heart. Cradling Solana in her arms, Valentina kissed the baby's downy forehead, whispering promises of a good life, a secure life, a life free from the shadows of her past. Giancarlo and Adriana looked on, tears in their eyes as well. It felt like a small family forming around her, far from the turmoil she once knew. In that quiet hospital room in Milan, Valentina realized that she had, in essence, built not just a company, but a new kind of empire, a network of true friends, supportive allies, and a future that belonged to her and her child alone. Long after visiting hours ended, she stared at Solana's sleeping face, marveling at how much had changed in such a short span. She had left behind the role of a betrayed billionaire's wife and emerged as a mother, an entrepreneur, and a woman whose self-worth no longer depended on anyone else's validation. As she drifted off to sleep, exhausted but elated, she understood one profound truth. No matter how stormy life's seas might be, she had the strength to chart her own course, one guided by love, ambition, and unwavering hope. Balancing new motherhood and an emerging startup tested every ounce of Valentina's strength. She often took late-night investor calls while cradling Solana and squeezed in product development meetings between diaper changes. Despite the fatigue, watching Global Bridge flourish filled her with renewed determination. Interest in the platform soared after a string of successful beta tests. Major non-profits praised its efficiency in delivering supplies to remote communities, while investors saw clear potential. Valentina poured her soul into perfecting Global Bridge, driven by the belief that better logistics could transform humanitarian work. Amid this progress, Alexander reappeared, demanding a say in Solana's life. Legal battles loomed as he pushed for custody arrangements. Determined to protect her daughter, Valentina held firm, negotiating only through her lawyer and on her own terms. Though the strain weighed heavily on her, she refused to let Alexander's interference derail her mission. Before long, Valentina received an invitation to present Global Bridge at a social impact conference in Berlin. She traveled with her infant in tow, supported by her ever-loyal friend Adriana. Standing on stage, Valentina showcased real-world success stories, aid delivered faster and cheaper to crisis zones, and outlined her vision for expanding that reach. The audience's enthusiastic response nearly brought her to tears. In that moment, she felt vindicated, her struggles shaping rather than hindering her path. After the presentation, a crowd of potential collaborators gathered, eager to learn more about Global Bridge. Seeing Adriana holding Solana at the back of the room, Valentina felt a surge of gratitude. Her daughter was both her greatest motivation and a living reminder of the new life she had built, far from the pain of betrayal. Returning to Milan, Valentina threw herself back into work. Each partnership signed, every NGO that onboarded reminded her how much she had achieved. Though she still navigated tense negotiations with Alexander, her focus remained on raising Solana in a loving environment on her own terms and forging a brighter future through Global Bridge. And as doors continued to open, Valentina knew she was on the verge of something even greater, a lasting legacy shaped by resilience, purpose, and unwavering hope. In the months following Solana's birth, Valentina discovered an inner strength she never knew she possessed. Global Bridge surged in popularity, with non-profits and investors praising its rapid, cost-effective solutions for delivering aid. Media outlets ran feature stories, highlighting Valentina as a rising star in social enterprise, no longer just the scorned wife of a billionaire, but a visionary in her own right. In Milan, she moved into a larger apartment, creating a welcoming nursery for Solana and a home office where she managed her expanding startup. Though Alexander remained in the picture, monthly video calls kept him informed about Solana. Valentina's life was hers to shape. After everything that had happened, she finally felt free. Her big break came when Amal Clooney personally invited her to speak at the World Philanthropy Summit in Geneva. The gathering was a magnet for diplomats, global leaders, and high-profile humanitarians. Valentina knew this was more than a speaking engagement. It was a chance to put Global Bridge on the global stage. Stepping onto the summit's polished platform, she looked out at a sea of influential faces. With quiet resolve, she began her presentation, a concise history of her mission to streamline aid logistics, punctuated by personal anecdotes of resilience. Slides revealed data on cutting delivery times and costs, weaving in stories of how Global Bridge had saved lives in remote disaster zones. Her conclusion was simple and heartfelt. Logistics can unite our fractured world, one shipment at a time. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, luminaries from major NGOs and investment firms lined up to learn more about partnering with Global Bridge. Amid the enthusiastic handshakes and exchanged business cards, Valentina spotted Adriana, cradling a dozing Solana at the back of the room. The sight of her baby in such a prestigious setting filled Valentina with a profound sense of gratitude. Later that evening, back in her hotel suite, she gazed at Solana, overwhelmed by how far they had come. From heartbreak and betrayal to a life built on her own terms, Valentina realized she was carving out a legacy of hope. This new dawn shone brightly, guided by unwavering resolve and the love she had discovered in both her work and her child. Thank you for tuning in to this epic journey of heartbreak, resilience, and ultimate triumph. Valentina's story reminds us that no matter how dark life's storms may seem, we each hold the power to rise above them. Betrayal, divorce, and a shattered fairy tale paved the way for an inspiring transformation from scorned wife to unstoppable boss. As she built her empire abroad, she showed the world, and, most importantly, herself, that true strength comes from within. If you felt the spark of motivation or found hope in her ability to rebuild, then let it guide your own path to success and self-discovery. Don't forget to like this video. If Valentina's journey resonated with you, share it with friends who might need a reminder of their own resilience. And subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories that will uplift and inspire. Your support keeps this community strong.